Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action, immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods. It will have real consequences for you.
The U.S.-Canada trade war has shifted into overdrive with Canada's precision counterattack with 100% tariff on Tesla and 25% on other goods.
And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada.
What started as a policy squabble is now a full-blown economic standoff, threatening to reshape the auto industry and global trade as we know it.
Surprising is that he chose to hit his closest neighbors and allies, Canada, the longest one.
The trade tensions between the U.S. and Canada have reached a fever pitch, and it's a high-stakes economic chess game.
Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Canada is rebelling against the U.S.'s 25% tariffs on Canadian goods by slapping back the same 25% tariff.
Like the American tariffs, our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon.
Canada is not cherry-picking random targets. They're going straight for America's economic jugular. Bourbon from Kentucky, orange juice from Florida, and the darling of Silicon Valley, Tesla, are all in Canada's crosshairs. Each of these industries is tied to key political states, making it not just an economic counterpunch, but a political one too.
Unfortunately, the actions taken today by the White House split us apart.
Going back a little, the U.S. has not spared its neighbors and allies from the tariff, and that has made Canada take severe actions. Canada is planning to disrupt the electric vehicle industry. Let's talk about Tesla first, because it's practically a religion for EV enthusiasts. Tesla's reliance on Canadian critical minerals like nickel, lithium, and aluminum is no secret.
Any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum, sir?
Aluminum too.
10%?
No, 25%.
Trump's announcement of a 25% tariff on these goods was a massive shock, as these are the lifeblood of EV production. But guess who controls a significant chunk of the global supply? Yeah, it's Canada. Even News and The Independent revealed that a 100% tariff on Tesla vehicles would spike prices for Canadian consumers and cripple Tesla's supply chain. When you mess with the minerals, you mess with the whole operation. As Rian Lubin reported in The Independent, Freeland told CNN that Canada plans to target every stakeholder that holds sway over the White House.
Absolutely. I think the evidence is crystal clear that the American people would suffer the most. And this happens in more than one way. First, the consumers will pay more for imported goods. And evidence suggests that the vast majority of the burden, if not all of the burden, would fall on consumers in the form of higher prices.
Now think about the ripple effects. Tesla's stock value is probably nosediving, and the EV market is facing potential shortages, leaving global consumers stuck with higher prices, fewer options, and a lot of frustration. This isn't just Canada hitting Tesla. The move could shake the EV market worldwide.
This sort of clustering around 5% pay cut for the economy as a whole. It's pretty significant stuff. Takes 2 years for it to reach that point.
The shockwaves from these tariffs are already showing up in rising prices, job losses, and factory shutdowns. But the people in the USA are also suffering the most. The U.S. auto industry, already under strain from global supply chain disruptions, now faces another massive hurdle.
American consumers will bear the costs of these tariffs.
The irony? The tariffs that were supposed to protect American jobs are pushing factories to close and sending shockwaves through the workforce. Take the Trump administration's 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, implemented in early 2025.
I'm afraid for both sides, for my workers, for the workers in the United States, but it's devastating. It'll devastate us, and it'll impact quickly.
These tariffs were designed to prop up domestic manufacturing. Instead, they've triggered factory shutdowns from Michigan to Ohio. Ford and GM, two giants of the American auto industry, have already announced temporary closures of plants reliant on Canadian and Mexican parts. These disruptions are no small blip.
There will be production stoppages at plants across North America as these supply chains are turned on their head.
Industry experts estimate the U.S. auto sector could bleed $25 billion in 2025 alone if tariffs persist, and local people have to pay the price for all these changes.
Absolutely. I think the evidence is crystal clear that the American people would suffer the most. And this happens in more than one way. First, the consumers will pay more for imported goods.
Canada, on the other hand, is playing a calculated game. By refusing to back down and targeting high-stakes exports like Tesla and bourbon, it's forcing the U.S. to feel the pain of its own policies. The bigger question is whether this will push the American auto industry into a full-blown recession. Some analysts are already sounding the alarm, pointing out that prolonged trade tensions could erase years of growth in an industry that accounts for 3% of the U.S. GDP.
Canadian energy powers American manufacturing, businesses, and homes.
Now, let's pivot to a surprising twist: the electric vehicle market. Amid all this chaos, Canada is boldly pushing forward with its zero emissions agenda. The country's electric vehicle availability standard is like a declaration of independence for green tech. Canada wants 20% of all new vehicle sales to be zero emission by 2026, ramping up to 100% by 2035.
I'm afraid for both sides, for my workers, for the workers in the United States, but it's devastating. It'll devastate us, and it'll impact quickly.
These U.S. tariffs, designed to hobble Canadian progress, might unintentionally give Canadian automakers a leg up. With Tesla prices in Canada skyrocketing thanks to tariffs, local brands have a chance to shine. Canadian automakers can swoop in with competitive pricing and win over customers who are fed up with the sticker shock.
It could be 50 or 75 cents a barrel, and particularly the Midwest refineries in Minnesota and Illinois and some of those swing states.
Now let's shift gears to the energy sector, because Canada's leverage doesn't stop with auto parts and bourbon. If the trade war escalates further, Canada holds what might be its most potent weapon: energy exports.
The Alberta oil and gas sector is not strong enough, big enough relative to the size of the Canadian economy as a whole, that even if the oil and gas continues to flow, that it's going to save Canada from a recession.
The U.S. depends heavily on Canadian oil, natural gas, and electricity, especially in northern states like Minnesota and New York. In 2024, over 60% of U.S. crude oil imports came from Canada, keeping American industries and households running smoothly. Likewise, hydropower from Canada lights up homes and businesses across border states, while natural gas is a lifeline during harsh winters. A disruption in this energy flow wouldn't just raise costs. It could plunge entire regions into blackouts and economic chaos.
With the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships.
So why hasn't Canada pulled this nuclear option yet? The answer lies in the mutually assured destruction it could cause.
Having tariffs is never a good thing, right? Like, this will have a huge blow to Canadians and our economy.
Shutting off energy exports would hurt the U.S. economy, no doubt, but it would also take a significant toll on Canada's revenue streams. In 2024 alone, energy exports accounted for 18% of Canada's total trade with the U.S., making it a double-edged sword. However, if the tariffs continue to bite, this card might come into play. And when it does, it won't just reshape North America's economic landscape. It will send ripples across global markets. OPEC, Russia, and other energy giants would undoubtedly step in to fill the gap, but at a premium that would make everyone feel the squeeze.
The broader the tariffs, the worse it's going to be for the world economy.
The global chaos, because this U.S. Canada trade war isn't just your typical neighborhood spat. It's the economic equivalent of tossing a lit match into a fireworks factory. First off, Europe and China are watching this circus with popcorn in hand.
And so there's going to be sort of a combination of pressures that raise prices in the world economy and also pressures that hurt output and efficiency in the world economy.
Here's where it gets spicy. Developing countries are jumping at this chance to shine. Nations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, often overshadowed in global trade, are exploiting the U.S.'s clumsy stumbles. They're offering cheaper alternatives and smoother partnerships, effectively stealing the spotlight. Is this the beginning of a new economic order? One where the U.S. is no longer the cool kid at the global lunch table, but instead, the one everyone avoids making eye contact with?
Absolutely. I think the evidence is crystal clear that the American people would suffer the most. And this happens in more than one way. First, the consumers will pay more.
Now, let's zoom back in on the home front, because this trade war isn't just about boardroom drama. They're hitting your grocery bill, gas tank, and wallet. Small businesses are buckling under skyrocketing costs, forced to raise prices or cut profits, while consumers tighten their budgets. The ripple effects are brutal. Less spending, layoffs, and struggling local economies. This trade war isn't some abstract policy debate. It's reshaping everyday life, making the essentials feel like luxuries. And if you want to know how the U.S. will react to this, stay tuned, because things are only getting started.